No more free rides. Starting tonight, rent is $1,800 or you pack your bags. My mother tapped her crystal wine glass at my daughter Maya's high school graduation dinner, smirking around the crowded table. Relatives nodded, whispering about tough love while Maya sat in her valedictorian sash, humiliated. My golden child brother, Julian, leaned back in his chair, swirling his vintage wine and looking thoroughly amused. "You've freeloaded under our roof long enough," my mother continued, her voice echoing across the private dining room. "It's time you learn how the real world works. Pay up or get out." The aunts and uncles murmured their agreement, casting pitying, judgmental glances at me. They saw a struggling single mother clinging to parental charity, taking advantage of a comfortable home without pulling her weight. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. Instead, I carefully set down my linen napkin, reached into my leather briefcase, and pulled out a thick blue manila folder. "Perfect timing, Mom," I said, placing it squarely on the white tablecloth. "Because since we're finally talking about who pays what, let's talk about whose name is actually on the deed to this house." The room went dead silent. Julian let out a dry, condescending laugh, cutting into his dry-aged steak. "Always the victim, aren't you, Sarah? Mom and Dad give you a place to stay, and you turn it into a scene on Maya's big night." That was always Julian's role, the untouchable prodigy. For 7 years, while I juggled 2 accounting jobs, Julian occupied the fully furnished 2-story guest house on the property, without contributing a single cent. Mom called him an entrepreneur between opportunities, cheerfully covering his leased BMW and luxury gym memberships from the family account. Meanwhile, my reality was entirely different. I woke up at 5 every morning to pack Maya's lunch, worked 12-hour shifts, and came home to cook dinner, handle the landscaping, and manage my aging father's endless prescription schedules. Whenever the roof leaked or the HVAC unit failed, Mom didn't call Julian. She handed the invoices directly to me, claiming, "You're living here, so you need to pull your weight." I paid every utility bill, every grocery run, and every maintenance fee, without complaint. I swallowed the constant subtle jabs, believing that keeping the peace was worth the stability for my daughter. But sitting across from Julian's smug smirk and Mom's cold glare, I realized their definition of family wasn't about love or mutual support. It was about exploitation. They genuinely believed I was their permanent live-in servant, bound by duty and stripped of all leverage. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. To understand why that smirk on Julian's face was so delusional, you have to go back 5 years. Back then, Julian launched a revolutionary logistics app that burned through $500,000 of borrowed capital in 9 months. When the lenders came knocking, my parents put up their 5-bedroom suburban house as collateral to bail him out. Julian simply walked away from the wreckage, but the bank didn't. Within 2 years, my parents were drowning in default notices, facing catastrophic foreclosure and public bankruptcy. Mom had come to my bedroom in tears, begging for a miracle. She said losing the family home would literally kill my father. So, I stepped in. I drained my entire retirement portfolio, liquidated every mutual fund I had built over 15 years, and secured a private bridge loan to buy out the remaining mortgage balance in full. To protect my father's fragile pride and maintain peace within the family, I agreed to an arrangement handled quietly by our attorney. The title was transferred entirely into my legal name, but Mom could pretend nothing had changed. She remained the public matriarch, while I became the sole legal owner who quietly handled the property taxes and mortgage payoffs. I thought I was saving my family, but loyalty, I soon discovered, was a one-way street. Last month, while balancing the household accounts, I uncovered a string of suspicious internal transfers. Every single maintenance payment and grocery allowance I had handed Mom over the past 3 years hadn't gone toward the house. She had been funneling every dollar directly into a private brokerage account under Julian's name, subsidizing his day trading hobby while telling the entire extended family that I was a freeloader living off her goodwill. The betrayal wasn't accidental. It was a calculated, 5-year performance. The real tipping point happened 2 weeks before graduation. I was dropping off my father's heart medication in the study when I spotted an unsealed envelope sitting by Mom's desktop. Inside was a draft prepared by a cut-rate local paralegal, a formal 60-day notice to vacate, drafted specifically against me and Maya. Clipped to the back were handwritten notes in Julian's sharp, hurried scrawl. The plan was spelled out in cold, calculating detail. Julian was planning to propose to his socialite girlfriend. Mom wanted to gift them the primary estate as a wedding present, which meant converting the main house into their personal compound and clearing out the dead weight. They intended to blindside me with an outrageous rent demand at Maya's graduation dinner, confident that the public humiliation would force me to pack up and leave without asking questions. They thought I was trapped. They thought because I had stayed quiet I was defenseless. For 4 days, David and I compiled every single receipt, canceled check, and wire transfer from the past decade. We pulled the original deed of transfer stamped by the county recorder, the full mortgage payoff verification from the bank, 5 years of paid property tax receipts under my name, and detailed ledgers showing the $68,000 Mom had covertly funneled into Julian's brokerage account. David drafted a comprehensive legal packet, certified copies of absolute title, an official accounting summary, and a formal 30-day notice of eviction directed at the guest house. I had 12 identical copies printed, bound, and placed into blue manila folders. One for my mother, one for Julian, and 10 for every judgmental relative attending the graduation dinner. They wanted a public spectacle. They wanted to use family pressure to humiliate my daughter and take what wasn't theirs. I was simply going to give them the audience they asked for. I unclasped the folder and slid 10 bound copies down the long mahogany table, letting them stop right in front of my aunts, uncles, and cousins. "What is this nonsense?" Julian scoffed, tossing his folder aside without opening it. "You think some fake paperwork is going to save you from paying your fair share?" "Open page 3, Julian," I said, my voice steady, cutting through the ambient clatter of the restaurant. Aunt Clara opened hers first, adjusting her glasses. Her eyes widened, darting quickly from the stamped county seal to the figures at the bottom. Across the table, Uncle Robert dropped his fork, staring in absolute disbelief. 5 years ago, I announced clearly, when Julian's failed company drove this family straight toward a catastrophic sheriff sale, Mom didn't save the estate. I did. I liquidated my entire retirement and paid off the $480,000 default to keep a roof over our heads. Mom's face instantly drained of color. Her knuckles went white against the edge of the tablecloth. "Sarah, stop this right now," she hissed, her voice trembling with panic. "This is a private family matter."
"No, Mom."
"You made it public the second you tried to humiliate my daughter on her graduation night," I replied, standing up. "Look at page 7, everyone. Over the last 7 years, I have poured $184,000 of my own earned income into property taxes, structural repairs, and utilities. Julian has contributed exactly 0. A collective murmur erupted around the table. The very relatives who had been shaking their heads in judgment minutes ago were now staring at my mother with open disgust. "Wait," Julian stammered, his arrogant posture collapsing as he finally flipped open the legal packet. "Mom, what is she talking about? You said the house was in a trust for me." "It's not," my father whispered from the corner of the table, his head buried in his hands. Tears tracked down his aged face. "Please, Sarah, don't." "Dad knew," I said, looking straight at my mother. "He kept quiet because he was ashamed. But you didn't just hide the truth. You took $68,000 of my maintenance money and funneled it directly into Julian's brokerage account while drafting an illegal eviction notice to throw Maya and me onto the street." The room froze in stunned silence. Mom stared down at the table, completely defenseless, the mask of the proud matriarch shattered beyond repair. I turned my gaze straight toward Julian, pulling a separate, red-tabbed envelope from my bag and sliding it directly into his plate. "Since we're establishing clear financial boundaries tonight," I said, my voice echoing across the silent dining room, "that is a formal 30-day notice to vacate the guest house. If you wish to remain after the 30 days, your new rent will be $2,800 a month, full market value, payable directly to my attorney's escrow account." Julian's face flushed bright red with fury. He scrambled to grab the document, his hands shaking violently. You can't do this. This is insane. Mom, tell her. You can't just kick me out of my own home. It isn't your home, Julian. Aunt Clara said sharply from across the table, her tone dripping with contempt. She literally paid off your debts while you lived like a prince on her hard work. Have some shame. Mom suddenly stood up, her voice cracking as she tried to salvage whatever authority she had left. After everything I sacrificed to raise you, Sarah, how can you be so cold, so ungrateful, humiliating your own blood like this? I didn't humiliate you, Mom, I answered calmly, looking her right in the eyes. Your greed did. I carried this family on my back for 7 years to protect your pride, and in return, you tried to throw my daughter and me into the street to fund your golden son's lifestyle. The free ride is over. For both of you. Without waiting for another word, I picked up Maya's hand, smiled at her, and led her away from the table, leaving a chaotic storm of furious arguments behind us. The fallout was swift and absolute. Julian refused to pay the rent, so my attorney initiated formal eviction proceedings. Within 3 weeks, the sheriff arrived to oversee him packing his designer suits and luxury luggage into the trunk of his leased BMW. His socialite fiancée broke off the engagement 2 days later, unwilling to tie her future to a man whose entire lifestyle was an illusion built on stolen funds. I placed the main house on the market through a reputable property management firm, selling it 2 months later for well over asking price. With the proceeds, I set up a fully funded, untouchable college trust for Maya, ensuring she would never have to compromise her dignity or independence for financial security. I bought my father a comfortable, fully serviced assisted living suite where his medical needs and care are handled with professional dignity, completely separate from my mother's reach. Mom tried calling for months, leaving voicemails swinging between bitter accusations and tearful apologies, but some bridges are meant to burn. Today, Maya and I live in a bright, modern townhome 20 minutes from her university campus. Looking out over our peaceful garden on a quiet Sunday afternoon, I realize true peace isn't about keeping toxic family happy. It's about knowing your worth, speaking the truth, and finally shutting the door on those who only loved you for what they could take.